This is the Buried in Work podcast, where we share tips and interview experts to help you simplify estate planning and end-of-life tasks.
I'm your host, Adam Zuckerman, and today we have a very special guest, Scherrie Prince. Scherrie is an attorney and asset protection coach who teaches entrepreneurs how to merge their business plan with their estate plan to create a moat around their assets. Scherrie's dedication in this field is deeply personal. After experiencing the devastating effects of an inadequate financial guidance in her own family, she committed herself to helping others avoid similar pitfalls. Sounds like a similar mission to Buried in Work. With over a decade of experience in asset protection, estate planning, and business planning, Scherrie brings a wealth of knowledge and practical tools to our conversation today. Welcome, Scherrie.
Thank you so much for having me, Adam.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. Let's start off. Let's talk about your personal journey and how it led you to specialize in asset protection and estate planning for entrepreneurs. It's a very unique mix, and we're curious how you got to where you are.
Honestly, it was just a lot of hard knocks and a lot of bought lessons. I grew up in a family in Mississippi, Louisville, Mississippi. And my mom was sick for most of my childhood, passed away when I was 16. So my brother and I just kind of bounced around with different family members. And at some point, I lived with my grandparents, awesome people, my mom's parents, and they had a 150 plus acre farm. And when they passed away, no estate plan, no trust, no will, no type of planning at all. It was really hard because, each state has a plan for intestacy or dying without a will or a plan. And it was just devastating for our family to kind of struggle with who would get what and to deal with my aunts and my uncle after my mom's passing. So I kind of started there even before I knew I was going to be an attorney. And just through life and a series of incidents, I landed in law school and devoted my life to this.
So that happened. You went to law school. Did you start off going, this is where I want to be? Because estate planning is a very unique niche. And not everybody, when they're a 1L first year law student, goes in and goes, you know what? Estate planning is for me. Did you find your way to that topic when you were in school, or did you go in with that intent?
Oh, not at all. And just to make the timeline a little bit clearer, I didn't actually start law school until I was 30. So I'd, been out for a while, lived life, started a family. And the goal was really to go in to get more knowledge to help myself. And then I was like, okay, I can do this for other people. I'd been in real estate for a while. I had my real estate broker's license before going to law school. Yeah. So I didn't actually go in with that in mind. But as I matriculated, I'm like, okay, this is how I can help other people. And then if you're familiar at all with Mississippi, you have a large number of farms, ranches, and just the way we live is a little bit different and lovely as well. And you also have a lack of formal planning in a lot of those places because property is just passed down through generations and no one ever, I'm not going to say ever, but a lot of people do not take the time to make a plan for future generations. So I kind of fell into it.
And that's just kind of amazing. Most people think that if they don't have an estate plan, it's all right because something will happen. And in a weird way, that's true in the sense that if you don't, like you said, the state is going to dictate how your assets pass and who they go to. And it's unbelievably important for you to put that plan in place. Now, you found out the hard way that not having anything means that the state gets to dictate what happens. How are you helping other people, and what are you seeing in terms of trends? Are people in Mississippi, do you think, and this is obviously a larger question, moving towards proactive steps of taking things under control, or is it still a phase where a lot of people just don't have anything in place?
I definitely think that the trend is moving towards more planning. One thing that I am seeing, there are more nonprofit organizations and government organizations here that address this issue and provide free services. A lot of people are like, well, can you help me with my trust or my will? And just to be clear, I am a licensed attorney in the state of Mississippi, but I do asset protection coaching for people internationally, which does not require a law license. So a lot of what I do when I help people outside of the state, and even some in the state, I'm kind of like the quarterback of your money team. So you have insurance agents, bankers, financial professionals, all these people that have your information and help you with estate adjacent activities. And so, I just kind of help those people internationally get those things together. But there is a trend towards planning.
All right, let's talk about that. So, we've got other episodes that are focused on the foundations of estate planning, a comprehensive estate plan with your will, with a trust and whatnot for individuals. But you have this unique expertise of helping individuals that also have businesses. Let's talk about that. What are some of those unique characteristics that people with businesses have to take into account that someone that doesn't have that aspect in their life can, quite frankly, just ignore?
Oh, yeah. So I opened my first business when I was 21 and did it with a handshake. And the business itself was successful, but we just didn't plan. And the business ended because my partner, was married and they had some issues, and that actually seeped into our business. So I was unable to continue that partnership. His wife walked in one day and said, "Hey, I'm your new partner." Well,
Hmm.
that's not what I bargained for. And so, that was also the journey towards working with entrepreneurs and going to law school. But yeah, so a lot of entrepreneurs are great at doing the thing, making the widgets. They may have a trade or they may have a service based business. They can actually produce the product or the service, but in terms of capturing the cost of goods sold and your bottom number for revenue and what it takes to keep the lights on, maybe not so much. And how does that translate into the legacy that you're leaving for your children or just future generations? So, just my love of entrepreneurship and what I know could be pitfalls about estate planning, that's where I came up with the building the moat around your assets.
Let's dive into that. So, when you say building the moat around the assets, it's a great concept, but what are some of the actionable steps people can take? What do they need to know?
Yeah. The first thing you have to do is identify your assets. We purchase things all the time, but do we actually know what our net worth is? Do we understand the calculation for net worth? I may have $1 million home, but if I have a $900,000 mortgage, I'm not a millionaire. And so I help people first identify their assets. This is what I own, this is what's owed on it. And once you identify where those are located, step two is to inventory those things. And any complete inventory has categories. Depending on the type of business you start, you may be bootstrapping it. So are you taking personal funds and, using those in your business? A lot of things are contingent in terms of liability on if it's used for a business purpose or personally and how you account for those funds. So we identify, we inventory, and then the third thing we do just practically, and anybody can do this without the help of a professional, is we improve the classification of that inventory. So if we did purchase it with personal money, but it's used for a business purpose, how do we recoup those funds properly?
Let's stop and sorry to interrupt you, but let's talk about that. So, if someone is starting a business, they're bootstrapping, they're using personal funds to run a business. What is that impact? What do they have to change? What do they have to take accounting for?
You really need to know before you even start your business what sort of legal structure works best for you.
Mhm.
And so sometimes it depends on the state that you live in and the type of service you offer. Do you have a brick and mortar business or is it e-commerce? And so a lot of that is going to depend on when you're looking at it is what's important to you. Do you require anonymity? So do you need to be incorporated in a state that may have no income tax or may offer anonymity protections like Wyoming, Nevada, Delaware? And so I just kind of have this decision tree that I take people through based on what's important to them. And we work with your team, people that you're already paying premiums to decide each step of the way. Because, Adam, it's really funny. A lot of times, the tax guy and I are at odds because I have this great legal plan that makes no sense for the client on a tax basis. And so it's important to have your team working together for you.
What are some of those differences that pop up? What would the tax person be saying that is at odds or potentially in conflict with the advice that you're giving?
Yeah. So I like to start with a three entity structure. Usually at the very top, like the umbrella of your plan, is a trust. I'm a
Hmm.
huge proponent for a trust versus a will and avoiding probate. And so, with that trust, you have other ancillary documents that you can actually use to support it, like a pour over will. You can use LLCs, C Corps, S Corps, just in combination with your business. And we just kind of stack the ownership. So the intersection where your legal liability and your tax liability is often in conflict is how we stack those entities. I'm looking at what may protect you the most from a tax basis, but I have no idea about the amount of money that you're running through these entities. So
Hmm.
sometimes we need more or less just based on what you're doing.
So are you saying that you'll have a revocable trust sitting on top, and then you'll have your business LLC, your business C Corp, S Corp as owned by that trust, and then you have your personal assets on the side as well with a pour over will? Is that typically?
Yeah, typically. And it really just depends because a lot of people will go and open up an LLC and they will have 5 different types of operating entities out of an LLC. They'll have a barber shop, a donut shop, a construction company. And so, we just kind of advise against that. And
Mhm.
we work with you where you are to make sure that the one business purpose is in the right type of entity and that the type of tax, planning that you need is also in place.
All right. Let's walk us through a real life case. Where did your expertise make a significant impact on a client's business? We like to bring it back to show people those real examples.
Yes. So there was one family business that was run in a small town adjacent to where I grew up. And it was truly a family business. It had been in the family for about maybe 30 plus years. But the mom was really the spearhead, and everybody else was kind of, working in the business and getting a check. The people at the bank knew her. She dealt with the insurance agents and she got the taxes done. Well, mom passed away prematurely, had not been sick. And when she passed away, because her name was the only name with the local secretary of state on all the bank records, assets were frozen.
Mhm.
Now, the business was receiving government benefits. And so they halted those benefits because the beneficial owner of that company, who they believed just to be mom, had passed away and there was no heir apparent. And so I actually helped the family come in, get meeting minutes, and just make those adjustments so that, we can actually run it like an actual family business and have a succession plan that just didn't stop the business if someone passed away.
When you talk about a succession plan, what does that mean to you? Because succession plans can mean different things to different individuals.
Definitely. And just to steal a quote from Stephen Covey's book, begin with the end in mind. Sometimes we build businesses that we think that we're going to die at our desk, and that's going to, that's when the business ends. But there are other options. An exit looks different for each type of business. You may build a business to get to a certain revenue level to sell, and so that's your exit. A divorce may be an exit. Bankruptcy or reorganization can be the exit of a business. So when we talk about a succession plan, I talk about a couple different things. An exit. What does the next phase of the business look like? What does an exit look like?
And for that, what documents do you need in place? What considerations do you typically go through?
Adam, how much time do we have?
We've got a little bit of time. Let's dive into it. Let's give people a roadmap so they can get high level. And then if they need to follow up, we'll give them your information at the end of the interview so they can find you. But let's give people some actionable steps. Like step 1, you need to make sure you have this. Step 2, you need to make sure you have that.
So, step 1, and this is just very basic. Once you've identified the type of entity, it's important that you maintain the formalities for that entity. Usually, if you have an LLC, then you have annual reports that you have to file. And you just have documentation for each different type of entity, corporation, annual minutes, and things like that. So that's just really important to start with. If
Mhm.
you have a partner, certain formalities and documents that you'd have to have as well. And one thing that I share with a lot of my clients, depending on their business structure, it's a spousal consent agreement. What happens if your partner passes away or is incapacitated? So when we're walking through and we're talking about succession and exit planning, you have to think about who is going to be at the table making these decisions. In any event, you have to, preferably have a plan ahead of time for tiebreakers. And so you have all these different considerations that go into your organizational planning. So that is phase 1. Phase 2, I like to share that you plan for death or incapacity. What does that look like? What sort of buyout clauses, insurance policies, like maybe a key man policy or just other things that are in place? Who has the first option to purchase shares or to buy the business? Will the business be sold? And so that's kind of step 2. And
Mhm.
step 3, when you're looking at exit planning, go in with a formula in mind for how the business will be valued. Because what some of us do, you may have some entrepreneurs who work 30 years. They take their retirement, they pull it out, they put it into this business. Okay. They may work another 10 years in the business and want to exit. Well, are you able to get out minimally your initial investment? Because who wants to work for 30 years and their retirement's tied up in the business, and now you can't get it out. So have a formula going in for what an exit looks like under different scenarios and just kind of work backwards.
So for entrepreneurs, people have said that the most valuable asset that they have is actually time. Money is fungible. You can get more, you can get loans, you can make more revenue, make more sales. But if their most valuable asset is time, that time when they start their business, most people would argue should be spent on growing that business. It sounds like creating the succession plans, creating all of these formulas, sitting down, having buy-sell agreements and spousal consideration agreements can take a lot of that time, which means that they're not actually focused on growing the business. When should people actually start looking at getting this in place? Is it immediately when they have the first idea to start the business, or is it after a certain amount of time when it looks like the business is actually going to be sustainable?
Oh, no. This is how you get your time back. Because if you go into business without having these things in place, then you're never going to have the time that you desire in your business. With anything, having a roadmap is always best. Before we had GPS, I remember actually going to the store and purchasing a map and looking at maps to travel. And so, if I just got in the car and left Mississippi and headed to Vegas, it would take me a lot longer to get there if I did not have a map. So these are things you want to do at the onset of your business. Don't just kind of get started because you're great at making widgets. Get these things in place so that as issues come up in your business, along the life of your business, you know how to address them.
Mm-hmm. Who's typically involved in making these decisions? Is it just the individual who started the company or the partners? Is it a team of individuals, an attorney, a CFA, a CPA, an accountant, others? Who gets involved?
It really would depend on how large your business is. If you are a mom and pop shop, then just mom and pop. We're sitting at the table, we're trying to figure out what this looks like. If you are a larger business, definitely involve your professionals at some point. And when I say your professionals, we've talked about your banker, insurance agent. Even if you do not have an attorney on retainer, you need to have a relationship with an attorney who is well versed and familiar with the type of business that you have. Someone you can call if you get into a pinch. And another class of people that I really don't think that are considered are entrepreneurs, people that are working in your business, making your business better, who don't necessarily want their own business, but they're helping you grow your vision. Those are, people that need to be at the table as well.
How do you involve them? Because oftentimes there's that weird dichotomy where the entrepreneur, the employee, they're there, they're not putting in the same effort, they don't have the same risks as the owners of the company. How do you involve them without overstepping and giving them too much say in what happens to the company that you created?
It's really going to depend on if you are actually working in your business. So are you an owner or are you an owner operator? Because, there are some people that just own the business and they've hired these talented individuals to actually run your business. So I'm a huge proponent for getting, these brilliant minds, putting them in your business and equipping them with the resources and other talented minds to run the business. So depending on where you are, and their level of, just day-to-day involvement, those are the people with the boots on the ground that can actually get you those answers that, your professionals may not know on a day-to-day basis.
All right. What are some of the other common mistakes or oversights that entrepreneurs make when it comes to their asset protection, and how can they be avoided?
Number one thing is just not doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a sexy topic. This is something that people, they put off because they feel like it's not something that's in their face. It's not a present threat to their business, but it's so essential. It is so essential. So one, not doing anything is the number one threat that I found. And then maybe a lawsuit pops up. Number two is thinking that you don't have enough assets. Oh, my company's new, or I just own one home. Well, one lawsuit can really devastate you depending on your assets and how you protected yourself. So start planning. And three, not considering just your external threats, but also internal threats. So if you are a business owner, it's not just people who may come to your brick and mortar location who may slip and fall. What about internal claims from employees? You may have workers' comp claims. You may have some employment disputes that arise within the company. So really not considering internal and external threats.
And to mitigate those threats, are those typically insurance policies that help protect? Is there some other way that you think that business owners can protect themselves?
Insurance is definitely a portion of it, but it's not the cure-all. What I like to do is kind of stagger different types of entities. Back maybe in the 90s or so, when there was like huge tort reform in Mississippi, it used to be that you can sue a nursing home and, it's ABC Nursing Home and get these huge judgments. And what they started doing is now when you sue a nursing home, you have about 12 different entities. You have to sue the owner of the land. You have to sue the staffing company that actually employs the nurses. You have to sue the equipment company that, it may have been the Da Vinci operating robot that's leased to the company. And so there are so many creative ways to insulate yourself from liability. So insurance is a portion of it. And there are so many creative things that I do to work with insurance agents to actually reduce your premiums. Because what could you do with extra money in your business? Maybe you're paying $1,000 a month for premiums, but now we've kind of stacked some structures for you, some entities, and you're paying 500. So
So
you
by utilizing an innovative approach of creating legal entities, are able to reduce insurance premiums while providing better protection for the company and the company's assets.
Adam, that's it right there.
All right. I'm going to play devil's advocate then. You have an LLC, you've got to file annual reports, you've got accounting. Do you typically see that the offset of the cost savings is actually more than the cost and time required for all the annual filings and the updates?
I definitely do.
Okay.
In business to make a profit. And a lot of these states have nominal fees for LLC filings. The annual reports in some states is free. I know here in Mississippi it's free. There are other states there's, maybe I think I've paid up to $2.99 in some states for annual
Mhm.
report filing. And yeah, taxes, that's just part of being in business. So having those relationships with professionals who can actually get those things done for you, you make that part of your business expenses.
All right. All right. Let's talk about the future. So, looking towards the future, what are some of the emerging trends in asset protection and estate planning that our listeners should be aware of?
So I don't know how much you keep up with celebrity news, but I don't do it a lot, but I do kind of catch, TMZ from time to time.
All right.
And as I see celebrities, and this applies to everybody, not just celebrities, but in some states, they are repealing some of the criminal laws that will give individuals an opportunity to bring cases that maybe could not have been brought otherwise. And also, the civil statutes of limitation as well. So if you look at something that normally the statute of limitations has expired and you're thinking, hey, I'm good to go, I'm free and clear, and you're in a state where somebody has a second bite at the apple to come in and possibly sue you, you have a whole new realm of possibilities because you're not the same person at 20 that you are at 40, hopefully.
Hmm.
States may look different. So you have something that happened 20 years ago. What do your assets look like now? And how could a judgment attach to these things and really devastate you? So when you're looking at estate planning, I like to do look backs with people and ask some of the questions that you may not have thought to ask 10 years ago because it didn't apply. So that's one of the things that I'm looking at in my practice.
All right. Yeah. And that's something that we definitely encourage at Buried in Work is when you create your estate plan, it needs to be for today to protect you tomorrow, but it has to evolve for the future. Because the reality is that, like you said, where you are today is going to be very different, hopefully, from where you are in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now.
Right.
What's one thing that we didn't talk about today that you think that our listeners should have on their radar?
So one thing that a lot of people, and nobody's really asked me this question, but I'm so glad that you did, is starting the conversation early with our children and grandchildren.
Mhm.
And it doesn't have to be a lecture like they're in school, but just having casual conversations about the importance of planning and caring for the things that you're entrusted with. So, my grandparents never had that conversation with me, but I was always really proud of the things that they had and their farm and living there. But I just didn't know how important it was. And maybe they didn't know to have those conversations. So that's something that's really needed, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And there's a concept that we also push that is, even if you do all of your estate planning, you have everything in order. If that information is not communicated with your heirs, with your loved ones, with your business partners, that it exists, odds are for quite some time until somebody that goes on that scavenger hunt unraveling your estate finds it, it's as if it doesn't exist at all. So you need to start those conversations early, and you need to make sure that the people that are going to be impacted are aware of their existence. Not necessarily the entire plan, but they have to know that it's there.
Yeah. You may not want to let them know that they're not getting what they thought they make it. So yeah, let them know there is a plan.
Yeah, it's funny there's so many people that have that idea of the will reading where it's in a dark mahogany leather bound room and an attorney walks in with a satchel and the family's all around. Just not how it really works. All right, Scherrie, thank you so much for your time. This has been great. If people want to find you, where can they go?
Best way to catch me is LinkedIn if you want to have a direct conversation. And it's just at Scherrie Prince. And we do quarterly webinars that are totally free, information packed at www.scherrieprince.com.
I love it. Scherrie, thank you so much for your time. We enjoyed the conversation. That wraps up another Buried in Work podcast episode where we feature tips and stories from industry professionals who specialize in making estate planning, end-of-life tasks, and estate transitions more manageable. If you enjoyed the podcast, please consider leaving a review, follow us on social media, or visit us at our website, buriedinwork.com. And don't forget, podcast listeners can save 10% off Buried in Work's estate preparation package and games with code BIWPodcast. Scherrie, thanks again. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Buried in Work podcast. Remember, you can save 10% on our estate preparation package and games with code podcast10 at buriedinwork.com.